The night was heavy with silence. The mountains of Soyut stood watch, guarding the fragile dream of a man named Osman Bey. A dream not yet an empire, but a fragile seed. When Osman passed from this world in 1324, he left behind more than land. He left behind a burden. That burden fell on the shoulders of his son, Orhan Bey. Imagine the weight of that moment. The father remembered as the spark, the founder in name, but the son standing before a people still unsure of their future. They were a tribe among tribes, nomads in the shadow of mighty powers. The Byzantines, the Ilkhanid Mongols, and countless Anatolian beyliks. Osman's warriors looked to Orhan and wondered, could he carry the fire forward, or would it fade into dust? Orhan was not like his father. Osman was the dreamer, the restless rider, the man of visions and battles. Orhan was quieter, more deliberate. He studied the politics of Anatolia, the rhythms of war, and the ways of ruling not as a chieftain, but as a statesman. And that is where history begins to whisper. For many historians, the true test of a founder is not in lighting the first spark, but in keeping it alive when the winds of time threaten to extinguish it. Orhan's early days were marked by both opportunity and danger. The Byzantine Empire was weakened. Civil wars shook its throne. Borders lay exposed. Yet the Ottomans were still small, with enemies on every side. It was in these uncertain years that Orhan made his first great choice. He turned not only to the sword, but also to the art of alliances. Through marriages, treaties, and calculated friendships, he began to carve space for the Ottomans to grow. One of the most important unions was his marriage to Nilüfer Hatun, daughter of a Byzantine noble. This was not merely love, it was politics, a bridge between two worlds. But alliances alone were not enough. Orhan knew that to survive, his people needed a true center, a city of their own. Soyut was too small. It was the home of nomads, not the capital of a state. So Orhan fixed his eyes upon Bursa, a city rich in trade, wealth, and history. A city that had stood as a Byzantine stronghold for centuries. If Bursa could fall, the Ottomans would not just be raiders, they would be rulers. The siege began in the late 1320s. It was not the lightning strike of Osman's raids. It was slow, painful, a test of patience. Orhan surrounded the city, cutting it off from supplies. Month by month, year by year, Bursa's strength weakened. The siege dragged on, until finally, in 1326, the city surrendered. And with that, the Ottomans transformed. This was the moment many historians point to. The moment when a wandering tribe became a true state. A dynasty with land, people, and a capital. A dynasty with ambition. But Orhan's story does not end there. For in his quiet victories lay the foundation of everything that would follow. The empire of Mehmed the Conqueror, the glory of Suleiman the Magnificent, the rise of one of history's greatest empires. And yet, even as these conquests would echo across centuries, Orhan himself remains in the shadows of his father. His name rarely sung, his deeds overshadowed. But was it not he who made the Ottomans more than dreamers? Was it not Orhan who gave them roots, walls, and permanence? This is why the question lingers. Why do some call Orhan, not Osman, the real founder of the Ottoman state? The answer lies in the choices he made after Bursa. The gates of Bursa had fallen. What was once a Byzantine stronghold was now the heart of a new power. The city did not just surrender to Orhan Bey, it surrendered to history. Inside its walls, Orhan did something remarkable. He did not destroy the city. He did not plunder it into ashes. Instead, he transformed it. He declared Bursa the capital of the Ottoman state. Here, for the first time, the Ottomans built not tents of nomads, but institutions of permanence. Mosques rose where fortresses had stood. Markets buzzed with trade. Scholars were invited to teach. Judges appointed to rule with Islamic law. The Ottomans were no longer merely ghazis, raiders on horseback. They were a governing power. But Orhan's genius lay in more than conquest. He understood that a state cannot survive on the sword alone. It needs a system, a rhythm, a soul. So he introduced one of his boldest reforms, the creation of the standing army. Unlike the warriors who fought only for loot or land, this new force, salaried, disciplined, loyal, became the backbone of Ottoman strength. Later, it would evolve into the legendary Janissaries, feared across continents. But it began with Orhan's vision. At the same time, he introduced coins minted in his name. Simple silver dirhams, stamped with his authority. To the world, this was a signal. The Ottomans were no longer a tribe under foreign suzerainty. They were sovereign, they were rising, and rise they did. Orhan pressed forward into Byzantine lands. Nicaea, today's Iznik, was the next jewel in his path. For centuries, it had been a center of Christian power, even a seat of emperors. Its walls were mighty, but by 1331, it too had fallen. The Ottomans moved their scholars and their judges into the city, making it a new center of learning and governance. From there, Orhan's armies pushed to Nicomedia, modern-day Izmit, capturing it in 1337. With this, the Ottomans controlled nearly all of northwestern Anatolia. They were no longer a border principality. They were a regional power pressing against the heart of Byzantium. But Orhan did not rely only on conquest. He mastered the art of patience and politics. The Byzantines, fractured by civil wars, often invited him as an ally. A dangerous ally, for his help came at a price. In one Byzantine struggle for the throne, Orhan married his son Suleiman Pasha into imperial politics, ensuring Ottoman influence stretched beyond swords into royal chambers. This balance between conquest and diplomacy was Orhan's hallmark. Unlike Osman, who lived in the fire of raids, Orhan built with caution, with layers, with calculation. And it was this careful weaving of land, law, and loyalty that transformed the Ottoman Beylik into a true state. Yet history is cruel. The thunder of Mehmed the Conqueror often drowns the steady drum of Orhan's reign. The world remembers the man who shattered Constantinople's walls, but not always the one who prepared the empire for such dreams. Still, for those who look closely, it becomes clear. Without Orhan, there would be no Mehmed. Without Bursa, there would be no Istanbul. Without the roots, there can be no tree. And so, the question deepens. If Osman lit the torch, was it not Orhan who built the path for it to burn across the world? The years passed. The Ottomans were no longer wanderers. They were no longer a frontier tribe. They were a state, recognized and feared. And at the heart of this transformation stood Orhan Bey. He was not a warrior like his father, always in the saddle. He was something else. A builder, a ruler who understood that conquest means nothing without permanence. His reign marked the shift from a fragile principality into an empire in the making. One by one, the institutions that defined the Ottoman world took shape under him. The standing army, the minted coins, the appointment of qadis, judges, the rise of madrasas. Orhan was setting foundations that would outlast centuries. Even his approach to power was measured. Unlike later sultans who ruled with an iron fist, Orhan shared responsibilities with his advisors, his generals, even his family. He listened. He calculated. He adapted. That balance made him a survivor. And it made the Ottomans flexible, able to bend without breaking. But perhaps his greatest achievement was vision. Orhan saw what many could not. that the Ottomans' destiny lay not only in Anatolia, but across the Sea of Marmara. The small beylik of Soyut had reached Bursa, Nicaea, and Nicomedia. The next horizon was Europe itself. And so, under his watch, the Ottomans made their first cautious step across the straits. His son, Süleyman Pasha, led warriors into Thrace. By seizing footholds, they planted a seed in the Balkans. A seed that, decades later, would grow into conquests that shook all of Europe. Osman had dreamed of endless expansion. Orhan gave that dream a direction. Yet history is often unfair. Osman is remembered as the founder, the flame that began it all. Mehmed is glorified as the conqueror of Constantinople. Between them, Orhan's legacy sometimes fades. But when you look closely, you see the truth. Osman lit the spark, but it was Orhan who built the fire. Without his reforms, his cities, his vision, there would have been no empire. That is why many call him the real founder of the Ottoman state. History often celebrates warriors more than builders. But empires do not live by the sword alone. They live by laws, by cities, by systems that outlast battles. Orhan understood this truth. His reign was not about glory on the battlefield, but about carving the shape of an empire that would endure for 6 centuries. And so the question lingers. What if Orhan had not ruled with such patience, such vision? Could the Ottomans have survived the turbulence of the 14th century? Or would they have vanished, another forgotten tribe on the frontier of Anatolia? The answer is clear. Orhan Bey was not just a successor. He was the true architect of empire. Subscribe to Historical TV, where forgotten rulers like Orhan Bey live again, and where history breathes through stories untold.